Everybody. I want to begin today by just saying how proud I am and how impressed I am with the number of Manitobans that have stood up in the past 24 hours just to help each other out. Yesterday we launched our online tool, Help Next Door MB, and I also want to thank the media for helping us to get the word out on that. And thank again the people at North Forge who did so much to get that program ready to go. It's an online tool. It's going to encourage Manitobans to help each other out in this time of need. Manitobans helping Manitobans is what we're all about, and we prove that because in the last 24 hours, 2,300 users have signed up to help in over 100 different Manitoba communities. That's an incredible response, and it just shows you the kinds of people we are here in Manitoba. We've already helped dozens of people who've requested help. They've been matched with a volunteer. We know that's just the beginning of the good that we can do with that program. So again, I say thanks to Manitobans for their support. That help can be in different forms. It's already helped people to pick up groceries or prescriptions for folks who can't leave the house and shouldn't leave the house. We've already seen a few cases of requests to just check on a loved one, have a quick phone call or a video conference to talk about issues and to help with mental health. These are lifelines in these times of stress. We know many people are struggling right now for many reasons. Manitobans are worried about getting sick, obviously. They're worried as well about making ends meet. Perhaps you're a person who can't work right now because you're required to stay home in isolation so you don't risk getting others sick as well. And good for you for staying home. That's a commendable action, and we thank you for doing that. Regardless, what you don't need is the added stress of wondering how you're going to pay your rent right now. And so we understand that. Nous savons que beaucoup d'entre vous ont de mal en ce moment pour de nombreuses raisons. Quoi qu'il en soit, vous n'avez pas besoin du stress supplémentaire de vous soucier de la façon dont vous allez payer le loyer. We've been working hard with stakeholders to find a balanced solution to address this issue. And so today I want to announce some additional measures that we are going to bring in on a temporary basis to help protect Manitobans who are renting and those who also are renting to others during this time of uncertainty. We continue to carefully consider what is needed to keep Manitobans healthy and safe. We are focused on protecting those among us who are the most vulnerable to the effects of this pandemic, the most vulnerable because of job loss, because of their abilities being challenged to make ends meet. So today I'm announcing two measures. Firstly, we are going to freeze any rent increases set to come into effect April 1st or later, and we will reevaluate, of course, the need going forward. Secondly, we are postponing all non-urgent eviction hearings at the Residential Tenancies Branch and the Residential Tenancies Commission until the end of May. This includes all new hearings and any hearings that had been previously scheduled. We are ensuring that no Manitobans will be evicted in the coming weeks as a direct result of the impact of COVID-19. Premièrement, nous allons geler toute augmentation de loyer qui devrait entrer en vigueur le 1er avril ou plus tard. Deuxièmement, nous reportons toutes les audiences non urgentes à la direction de la location et usage d'habitation et à la commission de la location et usage d'habitation jusqu'à la fin de mai. Manitobans shouldn't have to worry about keeping a roof over their head while they're taking steps to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. For some people, the sweeping changes affecting our daily lives may mean they are working less. For some people, they may be missing work while they self-monitor or self-isolate, and they're practicing physical distancing to help keep us all safe. These measures announced today will help to reduce the financial uncertainty and stress for many Manitobans. For them, this is just one less worry to carry. At the same time, it helps to protect the health of all of us, and it is important that we take a balanced approach. We recognize also the potential hardships that landlords may face, many of whom are mom and pop operations that save money for years to invest in their properties. I want to say thank you to those landlords because many have already taken measures to assure their tenants, to ensure that their tenants are safe, that they have a place to live during this unprecedented time, and I want to commend them and thank them. Some hearings of the Residential Tenancies Branch and Residential Tenancies Commission should and will proceed as they are of higher priority. Hearings that deal, for example, with health and safety issues or unlawful activity are going to continue to take place. And I would also emphasize that nothing that we are doing today should be taken as permission for a tenant not to pay their rent. That is an obligation they've accepted. The Residential Tenancies Branch is going to continue to be available to respond to urgent situations. If a landlord illegally shuts off utilities or locks tenants out of their unit, for example, or to deal with situations where a tenant is conducting illegal activities in their unit, these issues will continue to be dealt with. Our government's committed to taking the necessary steps to respond to COVID-19 and to help support the people who are most affected by this pandemic. I want to ask Manitobans to continue to rise to the challenge of helping one another, staying positive, doing the right things, and I want to say a thank you to all of our citizens who are doing the right things to protect each other and themselves. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Premier. Just a quick reminder to media online, 2 questions, a primary and a follow-up. First, we have Jill from CTV Winnipeg.
Premier, thanks for taking my question. I don't know if you've heard, but Saskatchewan actually just increased the number of cases to 72 today. Manitoba has 21 COVID cases right now. There was a lot of discussion today on the public health presser about testing and the ability for Manitobans to test. 2 questions. Was that discussed with the Prime Minister yesterday? And are Manitobans getting a false sense of security in this COVID crisis?
Yeah, there was a broad-ranging discussion yesterday. As you know, Jill, I'm not going to get into the details of a private discussion, except to say that, of course, we're all concerned about testing. Manitoba's testing levels are the 3rd highest per capita in the country, and we're stepping those up. The calls and the call waiting times for people trying to get information, we've been able to bring down by beefing up the staff there, and we're doing everything we can to ensure that we're addressing in an effective way the high levels of stress and concern that Manitobans have. But I would not want our low case numbers right now to be used as an excuse by anyone to ignore the physical distancing advice. To do that is a mistake. To protect yourself and to protect those around you is our first and primary obligation, and I want to say thank you to Manitobans who've been doing such a good job of making sure that that's exactly what we do. I want that to continue, and of course I know Manitobans well enough to expect that it may well continue.
Follow up there, Jill?
No follow.
Okay, Michelle from CTV Winnipeg, go ahead, please.
Sorry, I have no questions.
Okay, we move on to Drew from the Brandon Sun. Go ahead, Drew.
Thank you. Mr. Premier, today we've heard some concern from the City of Brandon about their revenues this year in the face of the crisis, about people not being able to pay property taxes and so on. So I'm wondering, at this point, is the province considering any measures to help out municipalities with their revenue stream, kind of with their finances after this?
Well, we've got revenue concerns right across the board, Drew. Just to be frank, we've got people who have a revenue concern at the individual level because they have lost their job. We've got as a consequence of the economic realities of this pandemic in the short term, your province has revenue concerns too. City of Winnipeg has already spoken about some of its revenue concerns, and I would say all of us are in this together. I'll have more to say later this week on some specific measures that we're going to be taking in partnership with municipalities that'll assist them. But I would say we must understand that our first concern has to remain our most vulnerable citizens. And so that is where our priorities of government are going to remain, and we're going to stay focused on that. We have people who need our help right now that we have to stay focused on helping. We have to protect the health and well-being of all of us. And the second order questions that will be many, I'm sure, the requests for support and funding from numerous groups and individuals, those will ensue. But right now we have to stay focused on protecting each other and making sure that we protect ourselves as part of that task and responsibility.
Thank you.
Follow-up question, Drew?
No.
Over to Diane at the CJOB.
Mr. Premier, as far as the rent freeze, obviously you're announcing the freeze as far as increases go. Why not a total rent freeze in terms of maybe deferral?
Well, frankly, we've got a danger in this time of making bad public policy to help some people in the short term that hurts everybody else long term. And so we've got to be very, very careful. These measures we're announcing today aren't a rent holiday for the whole of the province. They're designed to assist those who are living in fear right now that their rents may rise by making sure they know they won't, and also to make sure that they're not afraid of being evicted because of temporary short-term concerns. Landlords have been accommodating and have told me, I've spoken to a few, that they're already taking actions to protect some of their tenants because of these situations. What this does today is it makes sure that the tenants in our province can feel more confident, that they're not going to be out on the street, and that they're not going to be put into a situation where they won't be protected either, because remember, we're not cancelling all hearings of the residential tenancies branch. We're going to continue to have the major ones. So if a tenant has a concern, or in fact if a landlord has a concern, say somebody is found to be selling meth out of their place, they don't have to keep that person in their place. Like these are important things to understand. We're trying to create a more stable environment, but we've taken nothing off the table. In the longer term, we'll be very likely forced to look at a variety of other things, and I'll have more to say on a couple of other programs before the end of the week.
And just as a follow-up, kind of in a general sense, what would you say to Manitobans who are maybe feeling very concerned about the whole pandemic situation as a whole? What is your kind of words of advice to them?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think Manitobans deserve a little positive news. You guys have been good at giving them the facts, but the facts lately shake people up, don't they? And the reality of the situation is that it's a really stressful thing. Our resilience as a province was commented on in two reports this past week, one from the Bank of Montreal analysis that said that Manitoba is among the best positioned provinces because of our diverse economy, because of the actions we've taken to reduce taxes and to raise our rainy day fund levels, one of the best positioned provinces to emerge from this pandemic on an upside. And I just got this morning the commentary from the Dominion Bond Rating Service, and I'll read you just a piece from it, page 1. We expect Manitoba's credit metrics to deteriorate in the near term, but that the deterioration will be more modest than for most other Canadian provinces. Manitoba's economy tends to be more resilient during downturns, and the measures taken by the Pallister government over the past 4 years to realign government spending and improve the capacity of its agencies suggest the government should be better able to manage its finances through this downturn. That's two of Canada's leading and most respected economic assessment agencies, and they both said that Manitoba is among the very best positioned in Canada to succeed. Now that's some good news for Manitobans, but we're all Canadians first, and so we want to make sure that we do everything we can to do our part here. We can keep our cases down and keep our need for resources down. That's going to leave some more resources for people who need those supports in other parts of our country. I should mention too that I had a good conversation with Governor Borgum from North Dakota earlier today. Of course, we always talk about water, and so we did have some focus on that, but largely we were focused on the pandemic situation. And of course, they have very similar concerns to ours about the economic impacts, but also the social impacts. They have almost twice as many cases as we do in a state that has about half the population. So they're dealing with the issue in North Dakota as well. We're not alone. But I offered my encouragement and support to the governor, and he said right back at you. So the two of us are, like I think most provincial and state leaders, very ready to offer mutual support. We're also very concerned that we get back to doing the trade that we like to do with each other as soon as possible, because that's what creates the jobs and the economic growth that our province depends upon.
Marnie from Global Winnipeg.
Yeah, just kind of also adding on to Diana's point, we have spoken to the Property Managers Association who do have concerns about how they'll be able to make ends meet if their tenants can't pay rent and how they can still continue to manage the property, essentially. What do you have to say to property managers and landlords who have concerns about maybe people abusing this system and how this is going to impact them?
Well, I would say I hear their concerns, and I also hear the concerns of tenants, and I have great respect for the people who are making their properties available to be rented, and I think most tenants do too. So it's a balanced approach. We're not announcing rent forgiveness today. This isn't a program that tells Manitobans they shouldn't pay their rent. What we're announcing, I repeat, is just the fact that we're not going to allow rents to increase during this time, and also that only the major, most important hearings will be held going forward, and so that will not facilitate evictions. So in other words, we want people to feel more confident, and I think most landlords do too, that the folks that are renting from them know their rents won't go up for now, and they know that they won't be evicted either unless they're, as I said earlier, doing something criminal, in which case they can expect to be evicted.
And as a follow-up, when you say non-urgent evictions, what would define that and who would be making that call?
Sure. Well, the residential tenancies branch, I won't get into the detail because I don't have it with me, but they have criteria. They have to evaluate all applications. I gave you a couple of examples there. Somebody engaging in criminal activity, found to be engaging in criminal activity in a rented property, can be evicted. And we're not postponing those hearings. We want to see them evicted. Quite frankly, that shouldn't be happening. That's putting the person at danger, and it's putting other people at danger potentially as well. So high priority issues like those will continue to be addressed. And I think probably if you want to do a follow-up on that one, Marnie, we can get you more from the residential tenancies branch, more detail to help flesh that out in a better way for you. But essentially, the hearings where people are facing, where they're accused of criminal activity and that type of thing have to go ahead because we want to protect the health and well-being of other tenants within the building as well. I have great respect for the landlords in our province. They've invested cash in our province. Some of them are just our families that have saved for years, and I don't want to do anything to harm them. No one does. But we have to bear in mind that we have many tenants in our province right now that are very afraid and facing an unprecedented situation. We're doing what we can to give some peace of mind to everyone, quite frankly.
Steve from the Canadian Press.
Premier, you've seen the number of applications surge for federal employment insurance. It's quite clear that people are losing their jobs. Is there any thought to giving a sort of a universal income supplement so that renters can pay their rent, landlords receive their rent, and people can, continue to pay mortgages if they own a house? Some sort of massive mass income supplement to sort of smooth out the economy.
What you're talking about is sometimes referred to in public policy circles as a helicopter approach, Steve. Fly a helicopter overhead and dump money out the helicopter and everybody will be better off. That isn't necessarily the best social approach to take for a number of good reasons. I would mention that the employment insurance program that we all fund together is a very, very significant program that Manitobans have paid hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars into over the last few years. And we tend to be, because we have one of the lowest unemployment rates, very hesitant to claim on it. We don't need to. But it's there for times like this. And what it does is it provides 55% of your pre-employment average earnings for up to 4 months. So the employment insurance program is one we have already paid into, all of us do, employers and employees, and it is providing a significant support to people at a time of need. We have seen an acceleration in the number of people who applied for obvious reasons, and all of us hope that the program serves its purpose over the next 4 months and then we get back to work. On the issues of supports for people, I would mention that Manitoba has arguably the most generous supports for people who need help with rent of any province in Canada now. For example, with our Rent Assist program, we are giving supports to tens of thousands of Manitobans. In fact, our government in just the last 4 years has taken the budget for Rent Assist from when we began, about $13 million, up to almost triple that in the last year, to $37 million. So we are offering supports now. Taxpayers are assisting those who need help with their rent now, and will continue to do so. So I expect that budget, given the consequences of the pandemic, to rise very significantly in the coming year as a result of the pressures people face. And we'll step up, as we have as a government, to support those who are the most vulnerable and need the assistance.
Do you think that a freeze on rent is enough to help people who are now going with 55% of their income for the foreseeable future?
Well, the federal government has announced some additional programs already, as you know, shortening the wait time for employment insurance, monthly handout program to assist people who aren't on employment insurance. And the question of what is enough will be better evaluated over time. But we've taken nothing off the table. We'll continue to evaluate. Today, we're doing what we feel is right for today and what we think is right for the foreseeable future and fair. And we'll continue to take all necessary steps as we review the situation as it unfolds. But right now, I'll tell you that we already offer one of the most generous rent assist programs to our people in Manitoba of any Canadian province. So other provinces would have to introduce significant additional programs just to catch us when it comes to helping people who are renting.
From CBC, Bartley.
Mr. Premier, we've seen social distancing measures here in place. We've seen dentists withdraw their services before they have to. We see some medical clinics withdraw their services. Why are hair salons still allowed to remain open?
It's a fair question. Other provinces, as you know, Bartley, have already announced they're closing essentially all their non-essential private sector businesses. In Ontario and Quebec, they've done that. I expect there might be 1 or 2 other provinces that will do that as well. In those provinces, they have a significantly larger number of cases than we do in Manitoba. I've been asked questions today about how to deal more generously with the social consequences and economic consequences of the pandemic, but we are looking to take a balanced approach and not make those economic consequences worse by forcing people out of work unnecessarily. And so it's a balancing act, as you well know, in terms of protecting public health. We haven't a single case, you raised hair salons, we haven't a single case in Manitoba at this point in time, and fingers crossed we won't have one, of a hairdresser causing anyone to get COVID-19. But we could put every hairdresser out of work today or tomorrow if you would like. I'm suggesting that that is probably not necessary right now, as we do not feel that the preventative measures that we've been pursuing are not working. Quite the contrary. We feel that the educational efforts, which you have been helping with, quite frankly, are getting out to Manitobans, that people are making adjustments within their workplace, whether in the public service or in the private sector, and that they're doing the necessary things to protect their employees, to protect their customers from this pandemic and from this virus. So we'll continue, as I've said earlier, and I'll say again, we're taking nothing off the table. I'm in regular contact with provincial leaders and with the federal government. All our officials are working very, very diligently, and I commend them for this. And we're trying to continue. Our goal is to be ahead of the curve and to keep our numbers as low as we possibly can. I notice with some mixed emotions that the two other provinces passed Manitoba on case numbers yesterday. This is a problem that's not going away, and we're all in it together. So it's a balancing act, as you well know, and we're trying to make sure we're doing the right things to prevent and protect our people as best we possibly can, but not go overboard and push people who want to work and need to support themselves and their families and not push them out of work either.
Speaking of the economy, could you please comment on the 300 permanent layoffs at New Flyer and the 2,700 part-time ones announced today?
Well, I have tremendous respect for the management at New Flyer, and Mr. Subri has to make difficult decisions every day. So do I. I appreciate it that he doesn't comment critically on my decisions when I make them, and I'm going to make sure that I return the favor and not comment critically on the decisions he has to make.
Thanks.
From the City TV, Stephanie.
To echo a question from earlier, Mr. Premier, how worried are you that Manitoba's numbers are not reflective of the actual cases we have because of the restrictive, testing limits currently in place?
Stephanie, I'm not sure if you cut out on me partway, and I'll try to answer the question I think you asked, and then I'll invite you to ask it again in case I don't. I think you asked me about snowbirds, and I am hearing reports that some are not adhering to the self-isolation recommendations. So I would just, if I could, I would just say to anyone who's just come back from a foreign location to Manitoba, please make sure, absolutely sure, that you adhere to the self-isolation recommendations. They are very important for your protection. They are very important for the protection of others. And we have set up help next door, mb.ca, so that if you need some help with getting some groceries or to pick up a prescription, just go on that website, ask for help. We've got people that will help you, but stay in and stay out of the company of others you may infect, because that is the right thing to do, and I encourage you and thank you for doing that.
No, I was more asking if you are concerned that the actual number of cases in Manitoba are reflective of the presumptive cases because of the restrictive measures we have for testing.
Well, I'm not, because I know that our number of tests exceeds virtually every other province for our size in Canada, and we continue to do the proactive things of making sure that we're encouraging people to seek testing. Our numbers are starting to come down on the call line, and our response times are shortening. So again, this should, I hope, encourage Manitobans who want more information. And I'm sorry, I'm struggling to find my website to direct you and to encourage Manitobans to go on. But Manitobans who are listening to this, please get that website. Go, and if you feel like you want to use the resources of government, I don't have it right in front of me here. Anyway, go and do that test if you feel it's necessary. We're confining our testing to the greatest degree possible to vulnerable people who we think are susceptible and likely to suffer consequences from the infection, as you know. And our numbers are second or third largest, I think second per capita, most frequently tested in the country. So we're doing what we can to test, and our case numbers do remain low, but that will only happen. That will only stay if Manitobans continue to adhere to the recommendations that we're making repeatedly, and that they can benefit from themselves and that they can help others benefit from following.
Larry from the Winnipeg Free Press.
Mr. Premier, have you been briefed by your public health officials on worst case scenario, how many cases of the coronavirus we could have here in Manitoba and how many deaths in this first wave?
You mean a doomsday scenario, right, Larry?
No, a worst case scenario for how many cases? Have you been briefed on that?
I've been briefed on many, many things, many hypotheticals, but I don't know that anybody's ever described them as worst case scenarios. Oh, thank you. I just got some help here, and I'm always in need of help. www.manitoba.ca/COVID-19. www.manitoba.ca/COVID-19. I've had various scenarios presented, Larry, but what our health officials are trying to do is project on the basis of realism, not unrealistic hypothesis. So I guess to give you the honest answer, I can't say a worst case scenario because the worst case scenario might not be relevant to Manitoba at all. I haven't seen a worst case scenario. I've seen realistic scenarios.
Well, have you been briefed then on a realistic scenario, and how recently?
And how is what? Sorry?
How recently, and can you expand on the realistic scenario?
As recently as about an hour and a half ago, the briefing involved projected access and the issues around special equipment and facilities.
And was that around the number of cases that may occur in Manitoba?
Yeah, it was a projected needs analysis, yeah. I'm not trying to obfuscate on your question, Larry. It's a fair question. It's just very difficult to answer. We are in good shape right now. We are doing capacity planning for facilities, equipment projections and machinery projections, if I might put it that way, for procurement, to address procurement issues. I've asked our officials continuously, and they are briefing me continuously, not just on what is happening today, but on what our needs will be 90 days out. And we have had some discussion on further out as well. So it's capacity. I'm simplifying, but it is capacity, it's equipment, machinery, treatment, and so on. And also, as you know, in the immediate term and ongoing, it's frontline availability of skilled personnel, and that's one of the issues I think I want to commend our frontline personnel, as I think we all should. And I also want to say thank you to the Manitoba and Winnipeg Chambers of Commerce for helping coordinate with us the program to match frontline personnel with childcare they would need to make sure that those folks are able to do their job and know that their children are getting looked after with quality care. So we're addressing the short-term needs, but we always have our eye on the future as well.
Josh from the Winnipeg Sun.
Hi, Mr. Premier. I was wondering if you could respond to the CFIB's latest survey that suggests a third of businesses could close without relief, and I was wondering what's being done within the province to ensure that doesn't happen.
Well, first of all, Josh, we're all in this together, and we all need our small business, private sector business enterprises. That's the basis of Manitoba's economy. One of the things that Dominion Bond Rating Service and the Bank of Montreal analysis both commented on favorably was the diverse nature of our economy. And one of the things that we've really seen progress in was job creation and capital investment in small business, small and medium-sized enterprise. And Manitobans understand that. Right now, we're all facing an adverse time together. All of us need to do our part. And the small and medium-sized enterprises, of course, are to varying degrees going to be affected, some profoundly, some less so. So it's in my mind, and it's in our government's mind. We've had some preliminary discussion already around measures that we can add to with the previous measures we've undertaken that have assisted small and medium enterprise, like tax reduction measures, as you know, on the business side, on the personal side, regulatory reforms and so on, that have all assisted small businesses. But again, all kinds of possibilities are on the table. Right now, our first and foremost concern has to be protecting hungry children. It has to be protecting vulnerable seniors. It has to be protecting Manitobans who are living with a disability. It has to be making sure our frontline healthcare services are available now but are expandable as needs grow. And we have to remember there are a myriad number of other services people count on that don't stop just because we're all over-focused right now by necessity on COVID-19. So all those things need to happen. And so I would simply say to whether it's small business people in our province, it's a background I have, I'm totally sympathetic, that right now we've got to stay focused on dealing with the most vulnerable people and protecting them in our province. There'll be lots of time to talk about other programs going forward, and certainly some of that discussion is already underway.
As a follow-up, you mentioned a lot of other programs. Are there any plans in the works for a job retention program that would subsidize wages for employees that would allow employers to retain staff?
There's tons of opportunity for program discussions. I think at this point we're just making sure that we do everything we can to keep the main thing the main thing. And the main thing is to protect the lives and well-being of Manitobans, and our focus is on that. There are going to be numerous discussions that will ensue as a consequence of this thing once we're out of the alligator patch we're in right now. And I think that there is no doubt that we know that it's a complex situation with a ton of moving parts. But we're very conscious of the need to grow our economy. It's a commitment that we have as a government that I think has been evidenced by the results we've achieved thus far. And we'll come through after this pandemic better than most other provinces in the country because of the decisions we've made. But I will be very, very clear later this week when I outline our initial plans to you that they're not designed to solve everybody's problem right now, because they won't. No problem will be solved. No program will solve everybody's problem in the short term. There isn't enough money in the world for that right now. This is an historic pandemic, and we're going to stay focused on keeping the main thing, and that's protecting our most vulnerable citizens first.
Thank you. And from the Burden Empire Advance.
So
it will be
comment then, not hearing a question, and say this. Every generation has its challenges, and here in Manitoba, we have a history of stepping up and facing those challenges as people. And this is a message for Manitoba's young people. I've heard some reports, and we've seen some TV reports of young people across the country and around the world ignoring directives on social distancing, ignoring the directives on protecting themselves and each other and one another and other people, other citizens. We've seen this in Australia. We saw it in BC on the weekend. And I just wanted to commend our young people in the province for doing the right thing. You know, we led the country in both wars for volunteering to serve, to protect each other. And young people, the average age of people who enrolled was around 20, put their lives at risk. That's history. It's ancient history to young people today, I suppose, but I take pride in that. I think Manitobans do too, knowing we've always stood up and helped. So my message to young people in Manitoba today is do your duty, do your part, keep doing it. I hear lots of young people are signing up on our volunteer site, and I thank them for that. But remember, you're young, but you're not invulnerable. You might not die of coronavirus if you got it, but you might give it to someone else who does. So be careful and protect and do the social distancing and do the isolation. If you've been away, do the 2 weeks. Make sure you care for yourself and remember to do your duty. And I know you will, because it's your time to shine. Thank you.